Is March 21, 2021, and I'm here with Monte, and we're going to discuss many things today, but we're going to start off talking about the astrological new year. So happy new year, everyone.
Happy New Year.
We're in it. And as we know, historically, going back, according to the astrological tradition, it goes back over 2,000 years. The new year has always started until recently on January 20th or thereabouts, when the sun ingressed into zero Aries.
Right. You mean with the constellation?
Yeah. So with the when the sun ingressed on the vernal equinox. Right on the equator. So when the sun rose at 0 degrees Aries. Well, here's the thing. That's a long story in itself, because actually, when it was discovered, right, when they were trying to discover the rate of precession, right, there's a precession between
the equinoxes,
between the equinoxes, and where the constellations line up with those equinoxes and solstice points.
Right.
There was an awareness by astronomers over 2,000 years ago that the stars move very slowly in the backdrop against where the planets cross over those particular points.
Right.
And it just so happened that Hipparchus, who made that discovery, he when he noted it, the sun was actually at 4 degrees of Aries at the time he made the discovery that the sun was rising right at the spring equinox along the equator on that date, March 20th. And what he decided to do was, he says, okay, well, since the sun is rising within the constellation of Aries at that time, now it doesn't. Now it's rising at the constellation of Pisces, right? Very late Pisces. So it was rising in early Aries. He said, okay, so the sun rises in Aries every year. The sun always rises at Aries. When it's March 20th, it's 0 Aries.
Right.
That's how he came up with it. But actually, it was 4 degrees in. It was actually 4 degrees in within the constellation itself, but he actually pushed it over to 0.
Right.
So technically, he knew from a real technical, I don't know why it got translated to 0 Aries, but so it could have been. See, the point is that there's these points in the zodiac, at least how they were laid out initially, was somewhat arbitrary.
Yeah.
Where does 0 Aries start? Well, we sort of have an idea. And where does where does 0 Taurus start? 0 Leo, 0, right? How do we know? And so this is the biggest problem in astrology today, is because it's only until recently we have a better idea. And what we have in Western astrology is much more of symbolic and based on a reference point that was laid out 2,000 years ago.
Yeah, the Vedic astrologers still use the constellations. But have you ever, I don't know if you're familiar with Zecharia Sitchin's take on why there's all this monumental architecture around the world, where on the first day of spring or the first day of Aries, the light would come into the Holy of Holies and illuminate the place. Was because following the war between the gods, which is actually in the Vedic, the Vedas, is all those stories supposedly happened, and the gods had to decide as part of the peace process who would rule Earth.
Right.
And with the precession of the equinoxes was used as the timing for when a different person, one of the different gods, who were just like human beings anyway, they just lived a long time, when they would take over. And so when the first day of Aries goes out of Pisces into Aquarius, that'll be the Aquarian age. And for all we know, somebody might have taken over early, because there's Jupiter in Aquarius on the ascendant, with the Aquarius rising for the first year. And things are certainly Aquarian now, with all the cameras everywhere.
The mass surveillance, Big Brother.
Well, what's really interesting to me, because I always think of the polarity, and you have the Pisces age, how many angels can dance on the head of a pin, was sort of Pisces Virgo. How many angels can dance on the head of a pin was very Virgo to me. But the whole Pisces thing was was faith in a God that can see every robin falling from every tree. And now we have that with CCTV.
Right.
Now there really is
Right.
that kind of incredible, and it can be processed with when quantum computing takes over, that kind mass surveillance will be able to be processed easily.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
So
So I
I'm
mean,
like totally
it's,
freaked out.
yeah. I mean, I just look at the Jupiter and Aquarius,
Yeah.
as well as we see now. There's a number of things at work here. I mean, I think people are just looking to go out without wearing a mask, go to a movie theater. There's a sense of anticipation, this
Yeah.
sense of hope that, where finally COVID is over. So there's, Jupiter likes to elevate and wants to
Yes.
elevate. And so people are feeling more up. They're feeling more optimistic. The markets are certainly feeling that way. The bubble is just getting even bigger.
You mean the extend and pretend, as you call it?
The extend and pretend is going into a second phase here. Everyone's anticipating that $1,400 Biden bailout money. Everybody's like, there's this anticipation. What are you going to do with the money? You see this all over the website. I think most of the millennials are putting it into Bitcoin or Ethereum or some other crypto. Everyone else is planning to spend it on something. So there's Jupiter, right? The government, somebody comes to the rescue, right? And so there's that element of it. I mean, what's interesting to me is the fact that we see what's the closest aspect, of course. You've got Jupiter in Aquarius, but you also have Saturn in Aquarius in the 12th lurking. So that's a warning that everything is not what it appears to be. It'll appear good, right? Trump is gone, everything is fine, Biden's in control. He almost literally fell down a set of stairs, right? He almost,
poor thing.
Right? 3 times in a row, mind you.
Poor thing. I feel so sorry for him. Yeah, but Saturn's like the waiter with the bill. You had this great, wonderful meal, and here's the bill.
And here's the bill, right? And you got Saturn lurking there. And what's the closest aspect, I believe, in this horoscope? From what I can see at least, well,
the Saturn Mars.
You got that Saturn Mars trine, yes, and you also have that Uranus Saturn square.
Yeah, and you've been doing these amazing GTA webinars where you talk about innovate or die, and I think that's so true with the combination of Saturn and Uranus. Full disclosure, I have Jupiter in Aquarius.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily all bad, everybody.
I think the Jupiter in Aquarius is going to. I mean, I think we're going to have a boom period between now and October for sure. No doubt.
Yeah. You were pointing out that with the the Saros cycle of the equinoxes, that this harkens back to 67. Summer of love.
The Saros cycle for the eclipses, right? All eclipses are going to reinvoke all that energy from 1967.
The summer of love.
The summer of love. That's right.
Yeah, that I've been telling everybody, don't worry, summer of love's coming.
The human being movement, right? The human being movement.
Exactly.
Right? All that. And I mean, I actually posted a article I wrote on the astrology of the human being movement and the summer of love in my blog. We could talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Hey, I was there. I was 17.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about that period since you experienced firsthand.
Well, I actually don't remember very much of it, which shows that I was actually there. I was a musician, even at 17. It was a tremendous throwing off of the chains. There was a lot of problems between young people and their parents. Their parents had not only been through the Depression, they'd been through the war. And as you pointed out, Germany almost won that war. And if they had won the war, I don't know if anyone's ever seen The Man in the High Castle, which presupposes Germany and Japan winning the war. It's fabulous, fabulous show, and it's worth watching. So they had been through, COVID is nothing compared to what my parents went through. And here we are saying, we want to screw everybody and we want to do drugs and it wasn't just do drugs and just screw everybody. Everybody wanted to find higher consciousness.
Right. So it was that period where you turn on, tune in, and drop out, which came from, I believe, Timothy Leary.
Yes.
And that was basically, it it was a call for higher consciousness. It was called for
Yes.
alternative values, a new set of values that were
Right.
emerging. And it was
Right.
certainly catalyzed by the LSD, because the younger generation, right, that was the up and coming younger generation, was having an initiations through the psychedelic experience that the GI generation, their parents, just could not relate to.
Oh my God, no. There there were so many people walking the streets just in America, guys who had seen horrible things during the war.
Right.
And they had signs up in every barbershop, no politics, no religion, because when you had a fight back then, there were guys who were trained to kill. And
Right.
you didn't know if the guy in the barber chair next to you was one of those guys. And they were our parents.
Right.
They were the people on the street. They were the cops. So the cops were a little bit more aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
And plus my father, the only thing he ever apologized to me for was his stance on the Vietnam War. Because when the Vietnam War came along, they couldn't understand why we did not necessarily want to defend the United States. And we were seeing it as, you're not defending the United States.
Right.
You're being aggressive to people that don't
Right.
want this kind of treatment.
Right. And that started the Flower Power movement. And what's interesting about that is one of the reasons Nixon, when he first became president shortly after, I believe he became president in the late 60s, right? So the big issue at that time was young men were taking LSD and were not interested in joining the army and going out and fighting for their country, right? Dying for their country. I mean, it's really easy to carouse a bunch of 18-year-olds and certainly say, let's go fight a war, right?
Yeah.
It's not very hard to do because all that testosterone, but this was the first time in history you had a whole group, a large demographic of men not signing up. So they had to instill the draft. Right. And a lot of that had to do, from what I can see, and based on my research, was this tune in, turn on, drop out, was like a celebration of personal empowerment, emancipation. There was like a cultural and political decentralization, communal living, ecological awareness, higher consciousness, relationship, experimentation. Experimentation to use psychedelics, entheogens, as we call them today, for spiritual awareness, transcendence, all of that. So that energy, that 67 energy, right, that Uranus Saturn conjunction energy was being infused into the collective.
Right. And also, full disclosure, I never did psychedelics.
Really?
No, I never did. I think it's my sun in Aquarius, Venus and Jupiter and Aquarius in the 6th. I didn't need it. And Moon in Pisces. I was a musician, but that period of 67 is when my father threw me out of the house, partially probably because of my Vietnam stance, but mainly because he wanted to have his girlfriends over and I was interfering with his sex life.
His sex life, I see.
Exactly. So I was homeless during that period, and there was a tremendous pandemic going on in 69. Much worse than the one we have now. I mean, million people died, but nobody knew because they were all stoned on marijuana or
right. They were
all passing joints and back and forth. The idea of mask. What are you kidding? Was it Halloween? But I'm hopeful that the Summer of Love would happen because there's a lot of good things then too. I was homeless, so I don't remember 1967 very nicely. And I have a wonderful place to live now. But my wife and I have tried, Amy Zerner, have tried to keep the cream that rose to the top, not just the group, but the best part of the 67 alive in her art, which is behind me, and in our books.
You can see that. Yeah.
And her, just in our attitude. That's what I hope will happen with the Summer of Love. And I hope people will start dressing up, of course, having fun.
Well, I think that the underpinnings to the Summer of Love was, we're talking like it was very much connected with like peace, right? It was connected with, I mean, from what I could see, it was like a merger, a convergence. What do they call it? Like a perfect storm.
Perfect storm. Yeah.
Right. Perfect storm. right? Where and it was galvanized, right, with this anti-authoritarian movement underneath
Yes.
it. It was all essentially so, civil rights, women's rights, sexual rights,
Yes.
certainly where the gay movement emerges, where people can
100%.
be free. You also see the emergence of the X-rated industry in
Yes.
that, right, at that time, where it becomes a
That's
real
what
industry.
that's what drove VHS when it came out, and that's
Mhm.
why all the innovations were all because of pornography and things like that people
Right,
wanted to
right,
see. and
right.
but I
You
don't think people realize how different things were when no one had a phone that you could take pictures with. A phone was something on your desk that was hardwired to the wall.
right, right.
Things are so different and so much better now, and I think that's why I think the coming summer of love could be really
Well,
good for
it's
people.
what's interesting is that the if the New York Times was the establishment, right, the
Yes.
opposition was the proliferation of all of this
The Village
alternative
Voice.
media, alternative newspapers, alternative
Yeah, the
radio
Village
stations.
Village
Which
Voice.
the Village Voice is an example, right?
Yes.
And I believe there was another newspaper as well in San Francisco.
Oh, sure. There were lots
And
of them. Yeah.
yes, there was lots of them, and they were certainly behind. I mean, one of them was responsible for galvanizing or coordinating the human being movement, which actually happened in January '67. Right?
Wow.
I think his name was Gavin Arthur, if I remember. Gavin
Huh.
Arthur. Yeah.
Wow.
And he was the great grandson of President Chester Arthur. He was the astrologer.
That's incredible.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's amazing. He was an astrologer. He was working in the Haight-Ashbury counterculture scene in San Francisco in the early '60s, and he believed the age of Aquarius was emerging. He didn't believe we were in the age, but we were at the dawning. A lot of astrologers, no, William, we're in the age of Aquarius. No, we're not. Any real astrologer, such as Gavin Arthur, knew that we were the transition into this new age.
You
The
mean
age of
based on the first day of Aries, you mean?
Right. So in other words, that the first day of Aries, the backdrop of the constellation, right? The
Is still
backdrop of the
Pisces.
constellation was still Pisces, but on the verge of going into Aquarius, because the Pisces and Aquarius constellation sort of somewhat intersect.
Yes.
Okay. So he said, listen, we need to celebrate this. We need to start a movement. Right. And so he was the one that elected a chart, right? That would be the moment he believed that the new age of consciousness, this new, right, that correlated with this Saturn-Pluto alignment, which would galvanize, which would define what he believed was the emergence and awareness of cosmic consciousness. Now, what's interesting about that, at the same time, right, he was writing about this, and he was the one who elected a time to start the human being movement that actually started on January 14, 1967, when you had, like, I don't know, it was like somewhere about 10,000 people.
That is
right?
so weird, because that is so close to the Pluto-Saturn conjunction that started COVID. That happened in 2019, 2020.
That's right. So what we're seeing here is, at the same time, this cosmic consciousness he was talking about, this that would accelerate the general spiritual evolution of mankind, was the time that you see Stanislav Grof and a number of other Jungian therapists get together, and they start the transpersonal psychology movement,
Right.
that would find its home, that started in San Francisco, but would find its home, and that which would actually initialize the human potential movement in Esalen, right? And so all of this was happening, right? But it wasn't getting on the news. It wasn't getting on CBS News. That's what I'm getting at.
Which is why I still don't understand why so many people today listen to the news. Because back in the day, in '67, if you said to somebody, well, I'm doing this because CNN said it, or CNN didn't exist, of course, but I'm doing this because the news said it, or because some politician said it, no one would have anything to do with you. I've said this before in our conversations, and I hope if one thing that happens in the summer of love is people are going to start being more into themselves, their individual, and do the work to find out what's real. Because right now, I don't think anybody knows what's real. And I hope that's what the summer of love is going to be happening.
Well, I mean, the summer of love, also correlated with a lot of nonviolent protest, right?
Yeah, I mean, the people on the news don't know what's happening. I think the people know what's happening.
Right.
I just think that there's people on the news that are just saying stuff because that's where their bread is buttered.
Right, right. I'm just looking at this. When I keep looking at this, I'm also seeing like a spiritual revival. I'm seeing like,
oh, that's great. I hope so.
Yeah, I mean, there's different periods of history where we had spiritual movements, right? And this is something I'm doing a lot of research on and building the astrological argument. What galvanized in America? There's 4 spiritual movements that occurred since the 1780s, and so I'm getting this particularly from Occult America, this book I'm reading here. Whoop, there you go. You can see it.
Yeah, that's because it's because of all the occult symbolism on the dollar bill.
Well,
I see they have that
it's
on the
even
cover.
deeper than that. Most of the religious developments of movements, including the Ouija board, which was developed and invented in the United States, not in Europe. In fact, the author here, Mitch Horowitz, demonstrates this. A lot of Europeans say, no, we invented that. We had that hundreds of years ago. No, they didn't. This was directly invented in Northeastern America during the 1840s.
And now we did the psychic circle and the enchanted spell board. We've updated that for the 21st century.
Right. And what I'm finding out here is that the religion of America is the occult.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
Is the occult. And what's interesting is, like, if you look at one of the largest religions today, is what's Mitt Romney's religion?
Mormonism.
What's it based on? Astrology.
Yeah, and it also it started in New York State, which is very odd.
Right. So New York State, Route 20, right? It's called the Burn District, is the center. It's the epicenter. It's the Jerusalem of all esoteric, all major esoteric and occult movements. Now, so if you go from New York City up the Hudson, and then you go east along Route 20 out from Albany to Buffalo, every major movement, right, going all the way back to the 1780s in Freemasonry, all started from there and then dispersed out. All the founders. And I'm going to actually do a presentation on this. And
that's awesome.
This is all connected to Jupiter and Aquarius. I'm going to go very detailed about this and prove out what was the astrology that was galvanizing it, right? The astrology was the one that was pushing it. It's the driver. And I'm seeing that here somewhat with this Jupiter and Aquarius. It's actually, from a mundane perspective, Jupiter and Aquarius are still technically conjunct if you use a 10-degree orb.
Right. Yeah.
And yeah, so
it used to be back in the ancient days, if it was in the same sign, they were conjunct. So 10 degrees is pretty close.
Right. 10 degrees is pretty close. So I'm looking at this, but I'm also noticing Saturn, Mars, right? And that Saturn Mars trine is where people really want to take action. They want to do something.
Yes. Oh, yeah. People are sick of it.
They're sick of it. They want to get together. They want to congregate. They want to go beyond what they were confined and locked down last year. I mean, let's just take a look at last year's. Let's do that for a second so we have some comparison.
Okay. I just put up my the Ouija boards that Amy and I have done.
Yeah, we'll look at them in a second.
Definitely. No problem. I'm just putting them up there.
Yeah. Look at this. So this is last year's ingress, and you could see this quadruple conjunction.
Everybody stays home and gets money from the government.
Right. There you go. The second house.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Everyone stays home and collects. But here, the reality is that more people went out of businesses. We have nearly 50% of all small businesses went under. We had large scale institutions in retail went under. Lord and Taylor, for example.
Sure.
Institutions have been over 100 years with high income clientele go completely out and under, and the retail apocalypse and is gigantic. It's beyond retail. We're talking about so you could see the Saturn Pluto at work here. The draconian lockdowns and shuttering of businesses, created this creative destruction event, right? And that was actually necessary because, you know, I was thinking about this, and you have a business, you have a brick and mortar business and an online business and a publication business. If I said to you, well, if you couldn't be in business for 3 months, would you go completely out of business? You'd be completely broke, down and out if you couldn't be in business for 3 months. I'm just giving a rough number here.
No, but that was really what the test was.
Right. So I was thinking to myself, I said, listen, it would be tough, but if I didn't have income for 3 months, we have enough resources to get through that. Maybe even 5 or 6 months. What was amazing to me is you had corporations that were in business for over 100 years. After 1 month, were going out of business.
Yeah, because they were living hand to mouth.
Exactly. And these are, you know, and that just goes to show that when they make a statement today that 40% of all the companies on the S&P, for instance, right, cannot afford to expand. They buy back their own stock. They buy back their own stock.
Yeah, that's why the stock market is high.
Right, because the government buys their debt. And
right.
So what I'm getting at is these companies, we would have saw 40% if they didn't inject all that money last year. 40% of all the companies that people have their retirement funds in, etc., would be out of business. So that is what's happening right now. And it's interesting that we have that Jupiter right on the ascendant, sort of.
You mean for this year?
For this year, keeping things sort of afloat for the moment.
Yeah.
But here's the problem: Saturn, Uranus.
And Uranus is in the second.
That's right. So what do you think that means about the economy?
That means the sudden unexpected explosion of the economy.
Right. It's so good. It just can't get better until
it doesn't.
It doesn't.
Right. No, I know. And anytime you have Uranus is, I always tell people, listen, Uranus is the part of you that wants everything to be exciting when you wake up in the morning. And if you make your life a statement of your originality, it'll help you. And if you don't make your life a statement of your originality, it'll help you, but it won't help you in a way that you like. So Uranus, just like the pandemic, a lot of good things happen, a lot of horrible things happen, but a lot of good things happen. We were all forced to become monks in our caves in the Himalayas and to get in touch with spirituality. But one of the things that's going to happen is you've been saying this for a long time. The extend and pretend thing is you can't pretend with Uranus.
Absolutely. I think that people got much more resourceful. The people that did survive it and actually benefited, and some people really thrived, got really resourceful. So it's never about a lack of resources. It's about a lack of resourcefulness.
Yes, and not innovating. Uranus wants you to innovate. I mean,
right. That's part of being resourceful, right? You're just forced to innovate. You're forced to grow. You're forced to figure out, how can I contribute more in a way where I can make an irresistible offer with my business model, with my astrology, with whatever I do to make a difference in the world that elevates it in some way. And if you get that resourceful when you're forced to, that's when you thrive.
Yeah. And if you're doing it consciously, oh my God, then it's a wonderful thing. You know, because people forget, some people made fortunes during the Depression.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I mean, Amy and I, we did 3 books during the pandemic. We have 3 books coming out this year, and 2 of them we've been working constantly. Of course, we're a unique situation. You're a unique situation.
Right.
But I mean, we have had a small business. We know how hard it is. And most small businesses do not have the resources to stay open for a year. I mean, stay closed for a year.
Right. Right. And, you know, one of the things I did read is that if you can't walk away from your business or shut it down for a particular period of time, 6 months to a year, you essentially just own a job.
Well, yeah, but when you're an entrepreneur, that's all you have anyway. I mean, you work all the time.
Right. But I'm saying, like, you need to, at certain point, like someone asked the question, how long, like, what's the barometer that my business can stand on its own regardless of what's going on with the economy? And people said, well, within 7 years, if you don't have a business that can stand on its own and could withstand any economic environment, right, you simply just own a job. So that's one of the things when I advise people, I coach. You know, I do a lot of coaching with my retainer clients is I make sure that they're building a business that can withstand any economy, that if they were temporarily taken out of the picture due to medical reasons or other reasons for a period of months, that business would still continue to operate and be profitable.
Well, pro tip from the tarot, that's the Ten of Pentacles.
That's right.
Ten of Pentacles is something that lasts, something that's built on rock and that will last.
And sustainable, right?
Exactly. I mean, for a lot of people, and I hope they're watching this, I think if you've come through this time, you should be very proud of yourself. Unless, of course, you can't afford electricity anymore and you're not watching us on your computer. But the ones that are, I think one of the problems is people are not proud enough of themselves just for achieving what they've achieved. But I tell you, people who've gone through this I hope they're going to be wary and not trust people and get more self-reliant, because that's one of the lessons here, is to innovate and be self-reliant.
Right. Absolutely. And I think that Jupiter in Aquarius really promotes that, right? Because Jupiter in Aquarius is about innovating and going big or go home. Go big, innovate, go big, and go home. But here's the problem with some of this. Not the problem with that, but the problem with what people have. They don't know what the new standard is. I want to change. This must change. I have to change it, right? But they don't have a standard to move towards in order to inspire that innovation.
Well, they have to be balls to the walls, and that sounds like that actually comes from the time of aviation, when you would push the ball on the gas to the front of the airplane to make it go as fast as you can.
Right.
I mean, that's what Jupiter is to me. Go big. Not everybody can have a big business, but you can give it your all. That's going big.
Right. And you have to have a new standard, meaning like the standard that you've had, right, is not sufficient to get you to achieve what you need to achieve, where you really ultimately want to go. So you need to develop a vision, and then you have to say what has to change. So a lot of people say, I want to change. I definitely want to change. I go, what's your new standard? What are you talking about? Well, you need to have a standard that's consistent with the identity of that business, or the identity of you, or your identity, right? Like, in other words, what's your new standard? And a lot of people struggle with that. But that's actually what Jupiter in Aquarius is asking, because we tend to do what? We tend to lower or keep our standard to the common denominator of the 5 people we associate with.
Right. And the common denominator of most human caused suffering is poor decision making.
That's right.
That's why astrology and the tarot and divination and oracles, that's why it's so big now. Because I think people never, ever want to get in this position again, where the government and somebody is going to say, okay, all the businesses are closed and everyone's going to wear masks, and it sounds like the Woody Allen and Bananas, and everyone has to wear their underwear on the outside so we can check that you changed it today. I mean, government has become like a bad joke in terms of they certainly did not protect us.
Yeah, I mean, definitely what I'm seeing here is with the Jupiter, Saturn, and Aquarius on the ascendant, with especially squaring Uranus, and then I see Pluto here in the 12th. That's like Big Brother, the surveillance state, the deep state. We're going to dictate the policies and terms. It's like people who just avoid investing in anything outside of the dollar-based instruments such as stocks and bonds. They don't realize that the Federal Reserve is basically driving everyone into a pigeonhole of what their options are.
Right. Like with the Judas horse. My friend Linda LaPlante is doing something called the Judas horse, and it's a wild horse that they somehow train so that they can catch all the other wild horses, that they can somehow get it to go into the corral. But one of the things you said that in the GTA webinar that I found so fascinating was about how things are going to be more of a tangent curve, more of an exponential growth. I mean, for all we know, Bitcoin's going to become the world reserve currency, and screw the all the different national currencies. Things can change on a dime now, and I think that we can't limit ourselves for how crazy things can get.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I actually put together an article on why you need to create an exponential mindset, and I'm going to just show it here. I just want to show it here for the purpose.
I thought it was really awesome.
Right. And as we could see that, right, this is linear growth, right, or incremental thinking, which most people do.
Well, because it's
And
safe.
it's safe. And then here's the exponential growth curve. And then this area here, it's not shown in this graph. I have another one that shows the disruption. So there's a disruptive period here. Like the higher it goes, the greater the level of disruption to
Yeah.
the incremental thinkers or the incremental business people versus the exponential business people, the incremental banking system versus the exponential banking system. So that in this case, so like I was saying, the best way to think about this is for people who learned a language or learned an instrument, right? You're taking courses, classes, right? And you're totally immersed in it, and you're right, and you still are not able to speak it, right? But you're totally immersed in it versus someone else who just takes classes. And it seems like, wow, they're just spending like an hour, taking a class and just doing their homework. And they seem to know pretty much as I do. And I'm totally immersed in this. I don't get it. I'm actually living in the country now. And it seems like someone who's just taking a class seems to be doing as well or better than me, because when things are technology, for instance, develops exponentially, right? But so the brain works and learns, it models exponentially, not linearly. But what happens is we created education courses to operate with an incremental linear thinking, but the brain works, right, differently. And all of a sudden there is this transition, right, where the exponential, right, that exponential blows past, has that breakthrough moment, and it just blows past. And actually, I'm going to make this graph bigger for another article. It just like explodes in a short amount of time. And I'll give an example in history here. Let's take the Beatles, right? This is 1957. This is when, right? And the blue line here is the Beatles, and the incremental is going to be the Beach Boys, right? So
they didn't do bad either.
They weren't bad, but here's the thing. One of the biggest reasons you didn't hear about the Beatles back in 62, 63 has to do with the fact that the head of Capitol Records in the United States,
he didn't like them.
Didn't like them. And guess who he was? Who was he? Who was their flagship carrier for Capitol? It was the Beach Boys. He said, listen, the Beach Boys is the future of rock music. It's the future of young people's music, right? And because rock was still considered fringe music. You were there, you know this, but I happen to notice from my research that it was a very small percentage of the market, very not like today, which is the dominant. So he felt the Beach Boys, and for that period from 58, right, from 58, let's take this is 64. So this is 58, 64. This is the Beach Boys. This is the Beatles. All right. So by the time we get to like 1961, 62, right, what their first big hit, right? Their first big hit comes out. But do you hear of the Beatles? No. Right. This is 1963. Then they have Surfing USA, another big hit. Do you hear about the Beatles? No. But then the Beatles in 1964 come, right? And when they come, right, they're now reach parity with the Beach Boys.
Yeah.
Right. 64, they've reached parity. By 65, where are they? They're like up here. The Beach Boys are here. So the Beach Boys are a little bit, their records are still getting traction. They're still out there. They're still getting on shows. But where are the Beatles? The Beatles at this point are now they're moving up exponentially.
Yeah, right? They're selling out stadiums.
Right? They're outselling. The Beatles by themselves outsold not only the Beach Boys, they outsold every major artist, including Elvis Presley, for that period from 64 to 69. In other words, no group combined could compete with them.
No, they were phenomenal.
They were right. They were, the Goliath, right? So that's exponential. And that's what happened, by the way, with cars, 1873. 1920, So, right, nobody knew about cars in 1873, even though they had a transmission car. They had a gasoline powered car with a transmission.
What was it, Daimler? Daimler.
Yes, Daimler. Hold on a second.
Mercedes. Yeah, what's now Mercedes.
Mercedes Daimler. Right.
Yeah.
That was 1873.
Yeah.
And then this period here, right, is 1914, and then by 1920, right, that's it. So in other words, you could see the exponential growth function that happened with electricity. It happened with the internet in the 90s. It happened. So right now it's happening with what?
Crypto.
We're going to have that exponential moment. It's
coming.
It's imminent. I believe it's this year.
But that's what I was saying. I mean, it could actually become a reserve currency. It can replace the dollar as a reserve currency. That, if you're going to start getting into realizing the exponential growth that is possible, you can't limit yourself and say that that's impossible, because it's not.
Right. So it's accelerating returns to scale, according to Ray Kurzweil, right? Who wrote the book, The Singularity is Coming.
Is that the same Kurzweil who did the keyboard, the synthesizer?
Yes.
Yeah.
He has over 100 some odd patents under his name, and he works for Google now.
Right. So, he's a futurist.
Yes, he's a futurist and an inventor and a writer, and and he's a producer and a filmmaker, right? So the vision and uncertainty. So that's the issue here, that when people get impatient for the results, William, I put money in Bitcoin and I'm getting impatient because when I invested in it, it was only $100, and now it's 58,000, and I'm still not a millionaire. Don't sell it. Don't listen to that Facebook astrologer who tells you to keep selling it. See what I'm getting? Because people are getting impatient with the results. Because
they're all locked down and wearing masks. They're crazy.
And they have no choice but to read Facebook, right? What else are they going to do?
Exactly. So, there's no movies.
Well, there's movies now. They're finally coming out. Right?
Yeah.
So look what happened with Godzilla. Everyone like Godzilla, I didn't notice, is like they were talking about what's the biggest franchise in the world. And people say, well, it's Star Wars or it's Star Trek. Well, that's true. But they're saying Godzilla is like, or the Marvel Universe, right? Godzilla actually was making, like, it's exponential. Godzilla was growing, right? At this point, Godzilla is like the third largest franchise in the world.
It's like you in Bitcoin. You're an early adopter for Godzilla.
Right. So Godzilla is here, right? 1954 or something like that. And then look here, or 53, 54.
With the strings, you can see the strings on it.
Right. Right. And now look what's coming out in a few days, King Kong versus Godzilla. And they're saying this is the prediction market saying this is going to be the biggest movie of the year. Now think about that.
That's
right?
So crazy.
$300 million budget, right?
Wow.
They had A-list stars. And if you would have said that back in 57, right? If there was a way to invest in a non-fungible token into Godzilla, you would be a trillionaire today.
That's true.
So that's how we have to think. And the astrologers, I hate to say it, they're thinking what? Linearly. They're not thinking exponentially. And that's
they don't have Jupiter and Aquarius. What can I say?
And so that goes back to the fact that just what you said, Jupiter and Aquarius is all about that. It's all about that. Let me go back. Yeah, right here.
Well, there's the known unknown and the unknown unknown. And if you're comfortable with the unknown unknown, where anyone who has Aquarius prominent in their chart, you got to get comfortable with the unknown unknown and not think that you have to control shit, because shit controls us every once in a while, and you got to be able to ride the wave. I know that's unfortunately too close to the Beach Boys, but
no, that's fine. I'm a big Beach Boys fan, so I just want you to know that.
No, me too. But every time I hear the Beach Boys, I hear Hendrix going, and there'll never be surf music again. I don't know if you ever heard. He did a song called Third Rock from the Sun.
Right.
Third stone from the sun. And in this thing, it says there's never be surf music again. But I think people are scared. And if linear thinking makes you think, well, it was like this, and then it was like that, and then so it'll be like this.
Meaning the past equals the future. That's what it implies.
Right. I mean, there's certain things that you can say that, but most things you really, especially when you're talking about, people don't realize how on the edge things are. You know, you're talking about the businesses that failed. They were on the edge the whole time, but nobody
That's
knew.
right. That's right. And we're going to
Yeah.
see a second phase of that creative destruction with the stock market.
Yeah.
But we're not going to see it now. Right now, right? All the Wall Street fat cats are getting fatter.
Yeah.
But productivity is going down.
Right.
So, right. So that's the issue.
Well, look at Tesla. Tesla's a classic example of what you're talking about. I mean,
well,
they're doing all kinds of amazing, crazy stuff.
That's right. And they are now one of the reasons I predicted Tesla, if you remember a few months back, was last year was going to go to 4,000. Kathy Wood, right, of ARK Investment says it's going to go to at least 3,000. I said, wow, you know, she's born 1963 with the Uranus-Saturn conjunction, right? I should get her chart. But the thing is here that she's like considered like the cutting edge Wall Street manager now. She manages these funds that get what, like insane returns, like we're not quite close to Bitcoin, but within the range of what cryptocurrencies outside of Bitcoin make tremendous returns. And she said the reason why Tesla is likely to hit 4,000, what the market's anticipating is this: Tesla is not a car company, it's not a space company. It's an artificial intelligence company, because what makes those rockets land when they take off after they go into space and then they land is artificial intelligence. And they believe there's a certain term, I don't remember it offhand, that she used, where the artificial intelligence in the vehicle, whether it's a rocket or a car or anything, is self-aware enough, right? It's not just, it just knows how to drive a car, but there's a certain self-awareness that it has. There's enough sensors that it has. It's aware of who's in the car, what's happening around it with internally, like, and they believe Tesla is going to be the one that achieves that before Apple, which is coming out with their car, and all the other car companies around the world. They believe the market, and she is sensing, the market is sensing Tesla is going to come out with a real pragmatic, real world Model T version of artificial intelligence that will game change the entire world, and it's imminent and inevitable. And you
don't think it's the Aquarian age?
No, I'm just saying we're transitioning. It's a dawning. Look at Jupiter and Aquarius. Isn't that artificial intelligence that enhances and improves and changes the world and makes it more fair and equitable?
I hope so. I mean, that all sounds good to my Jupiter in Aquarius. No, but and once again, but the linear thinking, it's scary to think that I'm going to get in my car and it's going to be smarter than me. You know, that's scary, but you got to deal with it. You got to roll with it.
I mean, you know, without the expert systems, like even with the systems that I have in astrology, right, with all the black boxing and expert systems that can do this forecasting, that's been helping me be so successful and ahead of the curve on Bitcoin since 2011, before any astrologer knew that. And I know that because I went to the UAC conference in New Orleans in 2012, and I asked the question to over 100 people. It was the Financial Astrology Group, and it was a roundtable of the too big to fail financial astrologers. And I asked them about, what do you think about Bitcoin, a prospect of cryptocurrencies? And they said, we don't know what you're talking about. And everybody laughed. Right. Yeah. So, you know, to think the astrologers are ahead of the curve, that is not necessarily so. And without that, the reason I was able to look into Bitcoin is because I had these expert borderline AI systems. They weren't self-aware, but I would not have been able to do that with the type of astrology where you look at one or two or three aspects and you can make a determination of where things are going to go 10 years from now, 5 years from now, 5 months from now. You can't certainly do that with financial and geopolitical astrology.
I didn't realize that Alfie's stuff was AI, but
it's considered AI expert system. They call it expert system. It's like first generation AI.
That's amazing.
Right? Yeah.
That is, and you have been right. I mean, I was very lucky. My friend Jeffrey Pulver, who's a futurist and has his own FCC decision. The reason we all can talk on voice over the internet protocol, VoIP, is because of him. It's called the Pulver Doctrine. with the FCC, and he's one of the founders of Vonage. He was into crypto into it.
Right.
And so I've been, of course, I didn't do it. I didn't invest in Cardano when it was 3 cents, like he told me to. Or you probably told me the same thing.
Yeah, I did.
But
I told you when it was 19.
19. Well, he was when it was 3.
Right.
So
right. He's a little ahead of me.
No, but I want you guys to talk. He's the guy. He's the host of our Ask the Oracles every Monday at 12:30 Eastern time. And you know, crypto. It took a long time for the baby boomers are not adopting it because it's linear. The linear thinking prevents you from going for the exponential stuff.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said about age. Now, let me what I'm saying has nothing to do particularly with baby boomers. I think this
go for
applies
it. Go for it. I don't mind. I got big
no, because right now baby boomers are in that age group that they still have a majority of the wealth and power still, which is unusual, right? That certainly was not the case with the GI.
We ain't letting go. Come and take it.
Right. So here's the thing. I think that when you're younger, especially when you're younger, because the brain doesn't completely develop until your late 20s. First, they thought the brain was developed by the time you were 7. Then they said, no, by the time you're 15. Then they said 25. And then there's a recent discovery, the recent articles are saying, no, it's probably around the time you're 29. And what's interesting here
Saturn return.
The Saturn return is when the brain, the final fusing of all the network connections and the brain structure itself that's unique for that individual sets in place. And if you look at history, when were all of the greatest inventions, innovations that had an exponential effect occurred? When people were in their 60s and 70s, or people were in their 20s and early 30s?
100% in their 20s and 30s.
Right. So I think we are intuitively exponential in our thinking and our approach to whatever it might be, creative or destructively, right? Because you can have exponential failure and exponential, right? It can go down exponentially.
Yes, definitely. And that's happening too.
Right. That's happening too. So I think what's the issue with the baby boomers is that as you get older, there's a natural tendency and you have to work harder at it. You have to fight harder at it. You got to fight your spouse with it. You got to fight you got to fight with whoever, right? To remain exponential in your thinking, right? To hold on to that. And I think that's the issue today. The baby boomers are thinking linearly, which makes sense because they'll say, listen, I have a track record. I have a history. I accumulated this money over a 50-year period. Right. There's no way I'm putting it into this Ponzi scheme, because they can't make the leap, because it's not about their limited cognitive ability or skill set. It's nothing to do with that. It has to do with the fact that they are stuck into a linear mode. And that's going to require, for them to make that shift, right? I just think most of them just won't do it. Right. They just won't do it. 80% won't.
Well, Pluto and Leo, it's their ego. The ego is there's a lot of ego involved in this problem.
Right.
And they don't want to admit that all their stocks are exactly crypto. All that their bank account is crypto. It's numbers on a screen. It's the same exact thing.
Right. There's nothing tangible there.
They don't want to. They don't want to make the connections. You were talking about how when you're 29, you get the neurological connections. People don't want to make the connections even now. It's like when they ask you to go on an airplane, everyone's got to wear a mask. Then they stack you next to each other. Okay, here's your peanuts. Everyone takes off the mask and eats it right next to each other. There's so much disconnect with people nowadays because they've been driven crazy. The thing with the baby and the thing with age is, like, I've been eating well and trying to stay healthy since I'm 16. So I'm healthy. Right. There's a lot of sickness in the older people now because they did not eat organic because it costs too much or whatever. And so they spend most of their day is trying to keep from dying from illnesses.
Right. So only medication and surgery is the only recourse for them.
A lot of them, yeah. I mean, like when I go to the doctor, he's like, well, do you take any medicine? I'm like, no. And they look at you like you're weird. I was like, no.
The average baby boomer takes up to 7 different pharmaceuticals. Yeah,
exactly.
7.
And I haven't taken, I don't take any. It could change tomorrow. I know about hubris, and I know I'm
Well,
lucky.
no. But if you're getting your blood work checked, I think every baby boomer should get their blood work checked, and I mean a full blood workup,
Oh
not
yeah,
just the
9 vials,
CBC.
baby, 9 vials.
Right. VAP test, hormonal profile, you name it.
The
Right.
whole thing.
The whole thing twice a year now.
Yeah.
Not once, twice.
We do it.
Right. And if the blood work looks good and your ranges are, I would say not barely normal, but on the more higher end, right? You're fine. There's no need.
No,
to
it's
take
true. But I was just saying, one of the things with the baby boomers is they're scared. So
they don't even want to take their blood test. They go, I don't even want to see it, doctor. Am I okay?
I know.
And
blood
here's the problem. What's the standard of most doctors today? Are they high
blood
standards
tests
of health?
Yes. Well, no, because not for those people.
Right.
No, they want to medicate you.
Right. So their standards are so low to begin with. They don't. So look,
yeah, but I'm going into the doctor, because I'm going to do some preventative stuff, and they take my blood pressure and it's 120/80. To me, the 80 number is high, but she said you have perfect blood pressure. I said, I work out. There are things you can do.
Yeah, they look at you. That has nothing to do with why your blood pressure is good, sir.
Do you know that she actually? I can't believe it. I didn't figure it out till you just explained it to me. I was going to ask you because I didn't understand why she thought that was an odd thing to say.
Right.
I mean, I really didn't. And this is, our friend Theodore White, he's always writing about the baby boomers, about how evil they are, because a lot of the people in Washington who are baby boomers, they're pretty evil and they're pretty fucked up. But a lot of when people reach a certain level of age and they haven't taken care of themselves, you're dealing with people who are high on medication, high on antidepressants, high on alcohol, high on all this other stuff. And then the people wonder why the baby boomers are so weird, because they're trying to stay alive when they're sick.
Right.
So I might be a traitor.
And remain in power and call the shots.
Yes, which is sick.
Tell us how things are going to turn out.
It's so sick.
Even though they didn't see it coming.
Right.
I'm talking about particular baby boomer astrologists still running these organizations who continue to act in a way that's extremely hubristic in my.
Well, but that's one of the themes. I don't know how we would. Maybe it's Neptune and Pisces, but let's do the same thing.
I think Jupiter and Aquarius can be hubristic as well. I think Jupiter has a very strong connection. Apollo had an issue with hubris, which is connected with Jupiter, right?
You mean, yeah, but
the god Apollo.
Are you talking about Icarus flying close to the sun?
Right. Right. That's right. That's all connected with that myth, right?
Right.
Apollo, because Apollo was like, no, right?
The god of the sun.
Yeah.
Well, I am very aware of hubris because, what's that wonderful song? Life's been good to me so far.
Right.
It could change in a second. Everybody
in a heartbeat,
or in the lack of a heartbeat. Talking about things going down really fast.
Right.
But that's fear is a destroyer, and a lot of people are afraid of crypto and afraid of the future and afraid of exponential change and afraid of Saturn, Uranus. The Aquarian astrologers are afraid of that.
Right.
But you can't let that you got to go on. You're an Aries. You're not afraid of anything except fear.
Right. I mean, exactly. So, and when do people really start living? When they face death.
Right.
When they face the end or the potential end.
And Buddha said that's the highest meditation is meditation on death. People don't want to hear that either.
Right.
But he said it.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, that's, it's almost like they want to avoid death. And if many baby boomers, when I counsel them,
I do, but I know
they want to avoid death, but what they're doing is they're trying to hold on to a world that is quickly disintegrating and slipping away. It's very clear that this is the passing of an old era.
Well, I want it to pass. I mean, maybe it's 3 planets in Aquarius, but I want to see the future while I'm still alive. I want to see, because I think the future is positive. I know I might be a unicorn pooping baby boom. I think things are going to get better. Things are so much better now than they used to be.
They are so much better.
They are. They really are.
The issue has to do with the potential. There's a lot of Okay, so there are issues we have to deal with. Some of these intractable issues and problems that are not being addressed at all, right? And a
You mean
lot of
like
that has
world
to do with
poverty and the way they treat women all around the world?
right. Well, yeah, and I do think I think that one of the biggest issues is the fact that we don't have a sustainable civilization for the level of growth. And I'm not just talking about population growth, that we don't have a civilization that can create a sustainable middle to upper middle class in every country that is at least 50% plus of their population, meaning like the United States. I don't know if this figure holds true now, but
you mean in the 50s,
from 1900, well, even even up to 2000. I mean, you could argue from 1900 to 2000, right? That 50% of the American population or more, right, was truly middle class by several 8-point definitions, right? That does not apply today, for sure.
No, not at all.
So the United States, if the United States cannot sustain a 50+% middle class to upper middle class population, how is any other country going to be able to pull that off? And here's the problem. It's because we haven't built a civilization that can create that for every part of the planet equally, right? We haven't created a civilization. It's not just a failure of countries, not just a failure of local leadership or national leadership, or that's a part of it. It's a failure of vision. And one of the things about the people in the crypto space, they have a lot of vision behind them.
They do.
They're just not in it for the money. It's clear. They're not in it for the money.
Right. Well, and also you're dealing with the effects of colonialism when you're talking about the rest of the world.
Right.
And because things like that take a long time to work through the system, but there's a lot of hopeful stuff. There's a lot of inventive people, a lot of really smart genius people in some of the poorest countries in the world.
And we need to get those people in a position of leadership.
That's hard.
And that will make the tough decisions. They don't decide how to do it, they decide what to do it and why they're going to do it, right? And then the how, right? They don't get caught up with the tyranny of the how, right? So one of the reasons is like, hey, listen, unless I can get reelected doing this, I'm not going to do it. So, unless you can come, right? So that's the issue. And so we haven't built us a civilization. We don't have leadership with any vision. We certainly have leadership in the White House. There is no vision in the White House. I mean, one of the problems is with what I'm seeing now is you may have hated Trump's vision, but now there is no vision. All right. Until Kamala Harris, it's Kamala's world and we just all live in it. Right. Until her vision takes over. Right. We don't have any vision. And that is the biggest problem, that we have not created a sustainable world economically. More importantly than economically, we don't have enough power. We don't generate enough power, which the technology is available in order to create a sustainable world where the cost of everything continues to go down to zero, right? The cost of production, the cost of economy, the cost of finance, the cost begins to diminish more and more. The technology's there. We know how to do it. We have people doing that, but it's not happening at a global scale because there's no vision by leadership.
Maybe having a woman running things might be a good thing. I mean, I don't know. I think one of the big problems in society today is the fact that so many women around the world are suppressed and turned into baby machines, and their full potential is never achieved because they can't have freedom. There's just so much, people are put down. So there's so much wonderful energy in every people, not just men and women, because the sexual identity thing is changing too. I think that the freedom will eventually work itself out and work its way through the snake. But right now, the snake is having trouble digesting what it ate.
Well, the women's suffrage movement, I'm reading the Occult America. The underpinnings behind the women's suffrage movement was the spiritualist movements and the occult movements that were the underpinnings for the women's suffrage. They're very intertwined with each other. They don't talk about that, but there's tremendous history
That's
behind that.
interesting. I never
Yes.
thought of that. You
Yeah,
mean
Madame
because
Blavatsky, she was key, right, to getting women. You know, Madame Blavatsky of the
sure,
Theosophy
this
Society.
yeah.
1870, right? New York City. That facility and center is still there. You still can go to their meetings. They have a wonderful library, bookstore. So, nice brownstone building. The women's suffrage movement has made tremendous strides. When I was reading the level of repression going on,
Oh my
right,
God.
It's unbelievable. We're at the point where we have a female vice president now. So I do think women's movement is the women's emancipation empowerment movement, economically, politically, has come light years, right, from where it was in 1880. However, that being said, we don't have the level of, women having equal economic power, options, and political. That has to happen on a global scale in order for us to have a sustainable civilization. It's not just about women having rights and now they can kick you out the moment they don't.
No, I'm not talking about it. I'm talking about that there are women. There's women that live in slavery now, and they can't say no to having children.
Right. And it's a good chunk of the population. We're talking like nearly 1 billion people, right?
Oh yeah, and things have happened like in Singapore. In Singapore, they had to start giving women. Okay, they said to women, you don't have to have children. Guess what? They didn't have children. So the next thing you know, they had to give people incentives to have children because not every woman wants to have children.
Well, 55% of Japanese women, it's actually higher than that, but that was the best number the government can come up, refuse to have children, so much so they're deciding not to marry, so they're not forced by their husbands to have children. And I know that because I've been in Japan for over a decade. I've counseled hundreds, maybe over 1,000 individual Japanese women in my sessions with them, and I would hear that from a majority of the women who are under 40.
Right. And there's, I don't know if you ever had a couple have the discussion of, I don't want to have children in front of you, but I have as a total surprise a couple of times. But it's a major issue with a lot of women. They, children is not for everybody. Not everybody's going to be an astrologer or write books or do art or whatever. And children, having children is an art, I think. And I think people who have children or deserve the most support in the world. It's super hard to do, but not everybody should have it. And I know we're getting off the topic of
well, here's the news about that. The population of the human species is rapidly declining now.
You mean like in places like Japan?
No. Like overall, yes, in places like Japan, certainly Singapore as well. But over the Middle East, which is known to have like the average woman has 7 to 8 kids, right?
Correct, because they die.
It's crashing now. It's crashing. The global population is crashing, and this is a new phenomenon. So that's another aspect that we don't have a sustainable civilization. So we have to see, the problem is when you don't have vision, when you don't have vision,
the people perish. That was
people perish.
I forget that, but we're without dreams,
Bible, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's the problem is if you don't have vision, you don't have a workable, you can't develop a system based on some type of sound philosophical principles. We don't have principles of building a system that create a sustainable civilization. And that's what the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Aquarius is about. And I think we're going to get some intimation in a powerful way this year about that. Not just about it, but people are going to start doing something about it.
Oh, I think so. I think that exponential growth is happening right now. It's just like the flowers here in the Northeast are starting to poke their heads up. I think that once that, I keep referring to the lockdowns and all this other stuff, but I think that there are people making great strides right now that are going to start to happen. I mean, Amy and I, we've never given up. We just keep going. We lead what I call meme life, and it's no guarantee that you're going to live another day or that you're going to succeed, but it works so far. And I think there's a lot of people that are coming up with a vision of what life can be. I think you're doing it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a struggle too. A lot of people think everything is easy, and I said, actually, it was a lot easier just going to work for Sephora. And, you know, I knew exactly what I had to do. I had to meet with my project manager. I achieved all my outcomes for the week. And, you know, I didn't have to think about anything until Monday morning.
Right.
Like when you're doing it, when you're creating it, right, it's much more of a struggle initially, but it's much more rewarding. And I think people want to look at the quality of their lives. What's rewarding? I mean, what's so important, there's two things I think people need to have in this life. They have to master the science of achievement and develop the art of fulfillment, right? So master the science of achievement, meeting your outcomes, meeting your goals, creating success in your life. But you also, at the same time, all right, and this is often the problem when you see people who have a tremendous amount of achievement and then attempt to commit suicide, is they have no fulfillment. So it's the science of the mastery of achievement and the art of fulfillment, right? Those are the two core things. All right. And that's Jupiter, Saturn, right? What Saturn would be the
100%.
science,
Right.
right? And then Jupiter would be fulfillment. So it's the science, the mastery. How do we create a sustainable life? What type of life philosophy or principles do I need to cultivate? And then what's the strategy in terms of moving in that direction? And that will require you to set a new set of standards. And I think this is what's people are going to start doing. They're going to change their standard. Oh, I can't have this standard if I live in Long Island, or I have to move somewhere else. I can't have this standard if I stay with this job. I can't raise my standard if I hang out with these friends who all smoke and drink and suck down weed as much as they can, right? I can't so like that's not fulfillment for me, and that's getting in the way of my ability to achieve my outcomes. Some people just don't even know what their outcomes are, right? So I think all of that type of stuff is going to be at the center and forefront of 2021 now that the COVID lockdowns are lifting. And I believe all of that's going to end by Memorial Day. I think we're going to see a big, the mask's going to start coming off nationwide. We're going to see.
I hope so. I don't know about New York, New Jersey, and California.
Oh, no. New York is toast. New Jersey,
hey, wait
too.
A minute. Wait a minute. I live there.
No, I know you live there, but see, you're sort of like distance away from it. But
yeah,
you know, the problem is that this is when you have non-responsive government, which is really a moral failure.
Oh,
it's not a failure; it's a moral failure.
Yeah, don't get me started on our wonderful. I had to listen to people tell me how wonderful the governor was. I happened to have met him a couple of times, and I knew he wasn't so wonderful. But that's just me.
Right.
But you know, I think for people setting the new standards, that's one of the best things you could have done during the lockdown is get in touch with yourself. Who are you? What do you want?
What do you want?
Exactly.
A lot of people don't know what they want, Monte. Trust me. They go, well, yeah, I want a reading. I don't know. I go, you don't know what you want. I guess. I go, well, tell me what you want. Give me 3 things that if it's absolutely guaranteed, you could have it. And I could give you the pathway to do it using astrology. I go, I really don't know, William. I go, that's your problem.
Well, it is your problem because I wrote this book called Quantum Affirmations, and with all my astrology and everything, I think I might get remembered for doing quantum affirmations. And the first rule of quantum affirmations, the first thing you do is, what do you want?
Right.
Because if you don't, you know, it's like that song. If you don't know what you want, you can't get what you want.
Right.
And a lot, and as you know, when people come to an astrologer, they usually have a presenting complaint. They usually have what has brought you here? Why do you want to read? And I've had people say to me, you know, I don't know. I want to read me. I was like, no, that's not how it works. You know, what's your problem? I can help you solve your problem.
Well, yeah, in the beginning, because when you do that in the beginning, because you have to develop rapport and prove to yourself, you know what astrology is, you know it works. So you tell them about their personality, their strengths, their weaknesses. Oh my God, it's like you know, they're like, you must be a psychic. No, but then you get to the point, look, I'm not going to do that. Tell me what you're here for. Right. I mean, I generally know why they're here. I know why I can see the transits. I pretty much know, but then it's very interesting when there's a disconnect between what they ask me and I'm like, but then I know that's not why you're here. That's the cover story you put to yourself that you're now projecting onto me. And then I have to quickly break through that cover story and get to the bottom of why they're here. And I go, yeah, you're right. That's the real reason. But I guess I just didn't want to go there. I go, well, that's where we need to go.
Right, 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 right. Well, that's what's so beautiful about astrology.
Yeah, and we're always growing. People always say, people, oh, I'm 70. You think I'm still should get a reading? Of course, of
Definitely.
course.
I'm
The only people,
71.
right? So like, people in their 80s, like, they're going to go through
Yeah.
their Uranus return. I was like, you need a reading so you can get the most out of Uranus return, and you
Yeah,
need
and
to get
one,
exponential, baby. What's
yeah,
exponential? That's Uranus.
that's right. That's for sure. We happen to like, I'm very good friends. We were talking before about it's all going to come back to 67 and the Village Voice and places like, I'm really close friends with with Jules Pfeiffer, who did the cartoons for the Village Voice, and some of his cartoons, he won the Pulitzer Prize for his cartooning and for his the anti-war quality. I'm not necessarily saying that there's no justification for war. Sometimes maybe there is.
Well, certainly that war was certainly not justified.
Right. And like I said, it's the only thing my police sergeant father ever apologized to me. Not for throwing me out of the house where I had to sleep in the park and all this other shit.
Right.
But that was the only thing. I mean, I never went back. I never went home.
Right.
But the whole thing with the summer of love and all this kind of stuff is, it was always about spirituality, and spirituality is the only thing that can get you through Uranus, Saturn, and all these other things. Because if you don't have a spiritual basis, if you don't have, we were talking about the Ten of Pentacles, if you're not anchored in spirituality, I know you do talismans, you do all kinds of spiritual,
right.
Amazing stuff. If you do not have that, that's why these guys do get all this money and commit suicide, like some guy just did today, made the front page of the Post about the head of some restaurant chain. They say it's because of COVID. I don't think people kill themselves because they're having tinnitus. We have tinnitus, and I don't have it, but I mean, I know friends with it. But we also have examples of people who are in their 90s who are really cool, and
right.
and they're happening.
They're happening, right? Yeah.
That our friend Audrey Flack, Amy had a show with her last October. She just sold a piece for 7 figures out of her studio, not the secondary market, baby. I'm talking about, she sold a piece for $1 million, my friend.
Right.
And she's 89 years old.
Right. So
there's no excuse.
Third Saturn return, by the way, 89.
Exactly. And
so there's no excuse, right?
No excuse. That's meme life, baby. No excuses. Hold fast.
Right.
You just got to do it.
Yeah. I mean, I plan to be in business until I'm 84.
Right.
Maybe 85, because I get to, but like, I'm going to knock it out of the ballpark until then.
There you go.
I mean,
well, if you keep up the way you were with crypto, you won't have to work at all.
Yeah, but that's when I'll really want to work, right? When you don't have to work. Hey, when you were broke, yes. Right? And you were into music, that's all you did all day. You didn't think about the money.
Right, exactly. Do what you love and the money will follow.
The money will always follow, but you got to know what you want, and you got to be tight. You got to be a bit passionate. Like right now, I feel motivated to listen about crypto all day. Like I'm very careful what I read in astrology, because most of it's bad. But I like, in the beginning, that's all I read. I read 700 books on astrology, or maybe a little less. That's
why you're so good,
right? I read books. I studied with everyone. I went everywhere. I got immersed into the software before anyone was into the software. Back in the late 80s, I had my own notebook computer. It was an orange screen back then, right? And I was doing it. Right. I was like one of the first people to get Blue Star from Matrix Software.
Wow.
So I got into it. That's all I did. I ate it. I lived it, and now today it's like, I'll get the woke astrologer, and I'm really selective. Like within 2 sentences, like, no, like I just don't feel drawn. But when it comes to crypto, I listen, I sign up, I pay for all these conferences online. I'm just absorbing it. And you get to the point where you have your own mind. I don't need to go out there anymore and do that. And like, that's what I feel drawn to. I'm letting my intuition drive me. My intuition's telling me, you don't need to learn any more astrology.
Right.
What you need to do is understand what the astrology is saying about this space, about this innovation.
So you launched the crypto group.
Right. I launched the crypto group, and it was, like constant demand. Right. Since actually started in March, when the lockdowns began and national emergency was declared. It was like, William, get into crypto. Could you do crypto? Could you talk more about it, you know, and it was
But I
getting
thought
to
you
the
just,
point.
but didn't you just start yesterday?
Well, I started yesterday. It's the first official one, right? Where I
Okay.
started the group. So I decided, okay, we're going to do, you know, so I just decided to take ownership of it. And I figured there's no one in the world, and I'm saying this, and it's maybe some people think it's arrogant, but it's true. No one in the world who's been in crypto longer with the level of depth of astrological background, right?
Right.
You know,
No,
and
it's true.
there's nobody who's been in Silicon Valley, who's worked in the IT industry, who's worked with the top astrologers in the world, psychological astrologers, financial astrologers, mundane astrologers. I've worked with them. They know me on a first name basis. Okay.
Right.
All right. So what I'm getting at is, like, people have been asking me since last March, and they're saying, William, you've been right. You posted on Facebook, and I have people that don't even know you ask me, what did that guy on Facebook say what Bitcoin price was? Because he was right.
He
He's
surely
right.
was. Yeah,
Right?
he was.
So people say, how did you do it? What's your technique? You know, and it comes down to the fact that I understand it at such an in-depth level. And I was doing mundane astrology outside of that. Right. So it was sort of an easy fit, right? It was sort of came together, but now I have to own it at a higher level. Now I have to talk about non-fungible tokens, which are going to be the next biggest thing. It's going to be so big, it's going to rival Bitcoin. Not in terms of price, but in terms of, you know, it's like, think of the Rolling Stones. If Bitcoin is the Beatles, then the Rolling Stones may be non-fungible tokens, or Cardano. Or
I love the Rolling Stones.
Right,
So.
right. Not as big as the Beatles, but, you know.
Well, not as big, but I tell you, I like their music a lot. I like the Rolling Stones.
Oh, me too. I'm a big Stones fan from however 64 to 72. After that, I'm not.
Oh, after Brian Jones died.
Yeah, it's over. Yeah, it wasn't the same. Let's just say they weren't the same group. So I get drawn intuitively, and I'm like, I'm owning this now. People pay me very good money in the membership, so I'm telling them, like, okay, I'm going to this is what I would do. This is how I think. This is not going to be about what other people say, and that's why you should do that. It's all going to be about, this is what I'm doing, and I'm going to put it in presentations. This is how I'm thinking. This is how I'm investing. You do what you want to do. I don't care what other astrologers say. I don't care what someone else says. I'm going to tell you what I see, what I'm doing. And so far, as you know, and because we've been talking for a while here, it's been successful, and it's been successful since 2011. It's not just been successful since last year. It's just that people got to know me better because COVID forced the issue.
Right. And I think people should be very thankful that this sounds, you thought you sounded arrogant. I'm going to go to the end of the arrogance spectrum. All right.
That Pluto and Leo. Come on, let's go.
Yeah, I'll show you how a baby boomer goes out in style. But we're giving away a lot of shit. I mean, you and me and Theodore, I mean, we write this stuff all the time, and it's, you said the Bible, let those who have ears, let them hear. Let those who have eyes, let them see. We're trying to help people. And I think that's, from a spiritual standpoint, that's how you ensure good karma. You try and help people, you put it out there, and you try, and it comes back. So that I like our meetings today. I mean, we're not making money from this. We're just doing this for fun.
Yeah, we're doing it for fun. And, you know, we could probably talk 4 hours and, you know, like, people, you know what I'm saying? People go, why don't you guys talk longer? You know, and it's like, it just, you know, this would be the same conversation we'd be having if we were just hanging out in Long Island having a
100%. Right? That's it.
So,
yeah, but I don't know anybody who knows astrology as well as you do. I think I think I have to say, I think you're one of the, if not the best, well, certainly one of the best astrologers in the world.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot of great astrologers out there.
I know a lot of them, but I'm good at what I do, but you're just on a different level. Technically,
look, I was always hardcore, and I decided, look, the reason, you know, you see, once you say one of the best astrologers, then you get compared to the so-called best astrologer of the NCG or AFA. So I always, you know, I'll tell you something. I'm just doing the astrology I always wanted to do the way I wanted to do it. And what I realized after being involved with an astrological organization and going to all those conferences is I started thinking my approach to astrology can't be correct because they're not seeing it. In other words, it wasn't getting any traction, right? In other words,
yeah, but
right?
you see, that's you're using that as a standard.
Well, no, I was thinking that until I had that breakthrough moment and realized,
Right.
you know what? I was making money as an astrologer in my early 20s.
Right.
Before I ever joined an astrological organization. And I certainly don't know as much as I do now. I certainly don't have the life experience and the maturity and the depth and all that. So I realized now, like, you know, I'm the best astrologer for the astrology I'm doing. Like, you're the best astrologer at doing astrology at the level and focus.
Yeah, I get people into it. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm here.
So it's like comparing, you know, it's like comparing two great musicians. Is who's better of musician,
Right.
John Lennon or name somebody else here. Help me out here. If you take
there is nobody
Lennon,
like John Lennon.
Well, I know, but I'm saying, like, you know, if you could make a comparison, right? People would say,
right, Bob Dylan.
Bob Dylan is a better musician. He's a more true musician than John Lennon, right? I mean, I've heard these statements, by the way. You know, these Dylan radicals. So
right.
But we know that's not true. They're just doing
they're good at what they do
at the highest level.
Right. That's it.
Yeah. So I'm just doing what I'm doing. And I got drawn into, like I'm showing here, I wrote about the human being movement and the astrology behind it.
I can't wait to read that.
Yeah. And I was just drawn to that stuff. It wasn't like, you know, in fact, some of the people that were part of that movement who were actually members of the San Francisco NCGR didn't really even think much of what I wrote about. Not because it was sort of like it wasn't getting traction. It wasn't getting traction. I realized nothing is, you know, I realized that, like, I'm a fish out of water. I better just go back into my own ocean and just develop.
Listen, you just do your stuff and hold fast. They'll come around eventually. And if not, who cares? You're having a good life.
Yeah, having a good life. And here's the thing that I'm most proud of. There's so many people, and you know, there's so many people since March said, William, because I put money in Bitcoin and I followed what you were saying, I'm now able to move to North Carolina. I sold my place. I'm moving to North Carolina. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. Listing out all these things. I was like, wow. And then that really convinced me, yeah, I really need to do something more in a more responsible way. So
I'm telling you, I recommended people on my Facebook page to go listen to you and Theodore, and I have them thanking me for turning them on to you, you know, and not him because he says Bitcoin's going to zero, but
yeah, I know.
I don't know if he still says that, but
I think he's backed off from that. But I don't, you know, we should ask him, hey, what's your position now on it?
No, because like yourself, he has studied with the best people in the world. You know, I mean, I know a lot about astrology, and you guys have studied with some of the best astrologers that ever fucking walked the planet.
Right.
And when I see the people he studied with, I just like, oh, Jesus Christ. But at the same time, I've had people thanking me just for turning them on to you guys, because you've made people money. And when you're talking about saving people's lives, I've had people thank me for predictions I've made that have saved people's lives. What else is there? There's nothing better than that. You know, you've helped people. That's all we can do is help each other. That's spirituality in action.
Yeah. So that's really my whole approach to mundane astrology and to the, I mean, I do, and certainly with the crypto. And then I think my other big thing is developing a philosophical, like what is a sustainable life philosophy based on, let's say, the hero's journey.
Right.
Within an astrological framework, because if you're not, what's the opposite of the hero's journey, right? I mean, this is something a number of Jung talked about this extensively, that when you go off the hero's journey, it creates degradation and eventually results in malevolence. So people who act out malevolently or belligerently or destructively or self-destructively or just probably both have abandon their particular hero's journey. Everyone's on a hero's journey, all right? And there's specific sequences and initiations and rites and periods where certain things need to happen that are archetypal, that apply to us all, but are specifically unique, right, for us individually. And when we abandon that, that's where ultimately malevolence, right, takes place. I mean, psychopaths, sociopaths, people act, the Hillary Clintons, all of that, right? So like we could give a list when they have abandoned that. And I think the most important thing besides is getting people a philosophical framework of where they are along the hero's journey. And I think that is one thing astrology can do. But so far, right, it touches upon it, but it doesn't give us a framework to work in.
Well,
And
that's why you got to empower individuals to make their own changes, because nobody can change anybody else.
Right. But like, for example, where are you? Where am I on our individual journey? If I said there is a template for that, this has been discussed. This knowledge goes all the way back to the Greeks, right? In their mystery schools, but we haven't able yet to say this system. It doesn't matter if you're Buddhist or you're from India, right? We're on this path of development, this evolutionary. It's faster than evolutionary, right? It's a radical evolutionary path of soul development. And no matter where we are at, no matter what our charts are, we're at a certain point, and there's certain initiation, certain expectations, certain things the soul wants, certain things the psyche needs to unfold. And that's the next big thing I'm going to start putting together is what is the philosophical, practical, pragmatic, like a pragmatic philosophy based on a priori knowledge and an astrological concepts that very specific in a way, like sort of like this. You say, William, I have $1 million, and using astrology and the science of investing, using asset allocation, risk return, return on investment, risk reward, all of that type, all of those things that we know, right? That we can actually create an algorithm for and then project out, right? What do I do with that money? Where should I put it so I can, have the maximum? I take the maximum level of return for the level of risk, right? For ultimately what I want to achieve, right? Or what I want to do, or what I want to have, or for wealth preservation. We have pretty much that figured out in finance, even with crypto, right? We can layer that within the crypto space, but we don't have that with life. We don't have that. We're like, okay, listen, here's my chart and it's when I'm born, but where am I really at? We don't really have that. And that's what needs to be developed. We need to develop
there's your
that.
book. There's your book.
Yeah, so that's something I'm going to do some R&D when my solar arc sun ingresses into Gemini.
Well, the thing to remember with Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey is that when the hero gets really close to the grail,
right,
the monsters get really, really bad. And
that's
so
right.
So when the shit's really going down, you got to remember, maybe you're getting close. And then always, it always turns out that the real obstacle to the hero is the hero. The final push through is getting through your own bullshit.
That's right.
And I think
confronting your shadow.
Exactly.
Right.
And I think anybody that is doing that kind of shadow work and getting in touch and becoming more friendly with themselves and accepting, and I think that's where an astrologer can help a person become friends with themselves, and not so many people.
You mean self-compassion?
Yes, because so many people come to me and I'm like, well, if I came to you with the exact same problem, you'd tell me, oh, don't worry about it. It's not such a big deal. And here's what you do. And you're driving yourself crazy. And right. Once again, it's the hero's journey. The last monster in this particular phase is them, So, and I think that's why an astrologer, and I think us being generous with what we know and telling people what we know and having these conversations, I think it's a spiritual practice.
It's definitely a spiritual practice. It's a spiritual path, but I think we tend to confuse. I think we tend to think that if we're really working hard with our life and we're really in the world, that's not spiritual. I think the most spiritual people I know are really part of the world. They're making a difference in the world. And that was one of the fundamental differences between European occultism and European spiritualism and American spiritualism and American occultism.
Well, it's got to be spirituality in action.
Right. It's pragmatic. It's not just
Right.
idealistic, right?
Right.
So it's a very different, it's much more Virgo, much more tangible, much
Yes.
more. And I'll have better words. But I'm realizing from reading this book that, that putting astrology into action, like look at what Tony Robbins talks about, right? He talks about, developing a particular, developing a why, what's the philosophy of what drives me, and then developing a strategy right? Developing a strategy for that. But most importantly, what? Take massive action, and then
Yes.
keep monitoring and changing your approach while you're taking massive action until you achieve and get what you want. And it sounds very simple, but if you take that and put that within the context of the spiritual, right, in terms of astrology, in terms of some philosophical or spiritual framework, a cult, right, that has occult origins, right, that approach is very American. That's a very American approach to self-actualization, which is a spiritual path.
But I always remember that joke about the fishermen having the party on the boat and the stock guy coming up to them and saying, if you pool all your resources, you could do this, you could do that. And you could have this fishing fleet, you made all this money, and then you could have a party on the beach. And he's like, we're already having a party on the beach. Why do we have to go through all that? So as much as I admire Tony Robbins and all the things that he teaches, and it does work, I think you have to be happy right now. You have to want what you have and have that you immediately have what you want, and go from that basic strength of not longing and not feeling like you're not fulfilled and not having to fill up empty parts of yourself. I like the psychological aspect of astrology because it helps you to realize that you can be happy now, not just necessarily when you get a lot of money or a lot of whatever.
I think that really comes down to the art of fulfillment.
Yeah.
The problem is a lot of people don't know. They do and pursue things that they think that are going to fulfill them, and they don't live up to what they promised because it wasn't something that would fulfill them.
Right. But I have clients, I'm like, listen, you're having your second Saturn return. There's no one's ever had a second Saturn return that doesn't think things are moving slower than they should. And especially for the first Saturn return, it's like there hasn't been a successful person who's walked the earth and had their Saturn return that didn't think things could be better. It's just,
I think one of the biggest things with the second Saturn return is getting clarity about what you really want, not what society tells you.
Exactly.
All the things that society told you up until the time of your second Saturn return about how things ought to be and where and what you ought to accept, right? And I think that is when you transition from at that point, you really need to cultivate, right? No matter what your station is, right, in life, you need to cultivate the art of fulfillment. You need to cultivate that. You have to learn that. You have to actually seek it out, maybe, because you may not have a friend. You may see, wow, all these friends of mine, they got money, they got secure retirements, right? But they're miserable as hell. I don't have a model. I can't, right? So that is a big issue with second Saturn returners, especially baby boomers.
It is.
Want to be 25 at 58.
Yeah. And well, that's why Amy and I did the Creativity Oracle, which unfortunately dropped just as Amazon stopped accepting books. But that's just, meme life, baby. You got to roll with it. We did the Creativity Oracle because we do see everybody as an artist. Right. Everybody. Not just people who make paintings and tapestries like behind me and all this. We see that you can live artfully no matter what you do, and your spirituality, if you leave it at the door when you go to work, that's not real. It's got to be in you, and then you're enjoying your life every minute of the day.
Absolutely. And that's part of the art of fulfillment, and that's something we have to cultivate. Hey, by the way, I just want to say that I believe this is the first, this is the annual anniversary of our discussions doing the Astrology Exchange. The first one was on March 24th.
Wow.
Last year. So
well, that's your birthday, right?
That's my birthday. Yeah.
And coming up. And the 23rd is Amy and our cat's birthday. Our cat Zane's going to be 20 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing.
It really is. It really is. It just shows if you have a couple of slaves working for you, you can live to be 96 years old.
That's right. We work for them.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, my rabbits, I realized that with them,
Yeah.
I realized like my rabbit does nothing. Wait. I wanted to come up with the right. My what does my rabbit do? Well, what does my rabbit do? What impact does my rabbit, the impact is coming down. She does nothing, but everything is done. Right. Right. So in other words, everything is done for her. She has
like the goddess.
Like a goddess, right? All she has to do is show up, right?
Yep.
And everything is taken care of. So she does nothing, but nothing is left undone. So that is, who's really more spiritually powerful, your cat or you?
My cat.
That's right.
No comparison. Zane. I mean, I'll do anything for him.
Right. And there's a reason for that, because your cat's doing more for you than you ever do for your cat.
Well, that's what I try. When I try and get in touch with the spiritual, I try and say, maybe the divine forces feel about me the way I feel about my cat. And they're just giving me everything that I want. I just have to want it right. And I just have to do my part and make them laugh like my cat makes me laugh.
Right. Right. The cat always knows when to show up, when to go away, right? The cat has its own, it seems to know things, right? It has a prescience about it. And this is the same with my rabbits, right? I realized, like, wow, they could even do divination, try and like put some cards out and ask the cat, hey, tell me what's going to happen next with Bitcoin. And I'm telling you, that's going to be far better than any astrology or tarot cards.
We do have a YouTube video of Zane picking tarot cards. He's done it.
And proving out to be true, right? Like Zane says, right? You could have a website. Zane says.
A lot of people say that we should do it.
Right. So we did that with our rabbits for fun.
Really?
It was just really amazing. Yeah, it was just for fun. It was like, wow, this is just amazing. So they're more spiritually advanced than we are, right? They're here to help us. They chose to be with us.
Yeah.
Right? And so, we think we're first, but we're really last.
Well, that's what it says. Those that were last shall be first.
Right. So,
cool.
So any rate, and who has more compassion, more love, more understanding, a human or your pet?
Well, my pet has no compassion.
Yeah, well,
we're talking about a cat.
Cat. Yeah, right.
No.
Maybe bits of it will show, but definitely the level of love that emanates out of animals is extraordinary, right? Game changing, right? People are more. I know people are totally devastated for months after a pet dies, and not the same way when a brother or even with a parent.
You're looking at one of them. I mean, we know he's going to go eventually, but we fear it all the time.
That's right. So it's sort of like, when your dad died, it will not have the same level of impact than when your cat dies. No way. When your cat dies, it's not gonna. It's gonna.
No, we know. I mean, all my spirituality, I'll be like a philosopher with a toothache. It'll go right out the window,
Yeah. So, this is all connected to what we've been talking about here. There's the consciousness, elevation in consciousness, the awareness that animals are sentient, they're intelligent, and not only intelligent, but they're probably, I would say, they are significantly more spiritually advanced.
Oh, yeah.
In their evolution, right? They've achieved all the things our civilization is trying to achieve. And now they're back here trying to assist us, right, in our development. So this is
well, Zane helped us get through 2001. He helped us get through 9/11. He was there. Him and his sister, they helped us get through. I know he's going to help us get through the pandemic, and then maybe he'll make his transition. As long as he doesn't suffer, I'm happy.
He's not going to, so he's going to make his transition, and he's going to and then what he's going to do next is bring the next one. He's already lining up somebody else, that.
I don't know. I don't know about that.
I think so. There is another coming.
I think he's a
prediction.
Okay. All right. Well,
there is another
astrologer. So what can I say?
Well, we better wrap this up. We've been doing this for a couple hours.
Okay.
So I was just having a blast, but I'm getting the message. It's time to wrap up.
Yeah. Well, it's great talking with you, and thanks to Catherine. I really do appreciate her production.
Oh, Catherine, thanks you. We had a really good blast. I'm looking forward to our next discussion. We'll certainly, it'll be very interesting to see, especially we're going to be in the realm of the next eclipse, right? So the eclipse is in June, but we're going to start feeling it, certainly sometime late April. So
yeah.
you know, because it's been sort of quiet, don't you think? It's been a little quiet.
It wasn't like the last eclipse. Jesus.
No. And last year's eclipses are much more powerful than this year's, but we're still in the influence of that June eclipse. It's still trickling over until October 1st. So we're going to have another eclipse in June. At the same time, we have that second Saturn Uranus. So it's going to be interesting when we talk again, and we'll start getting intimations of what that is. But I think this Jupiter, right? This, let me bring it up here. The Jupiter on the ascendant is going to start showing itself in ways that we really can't anticipate at the moment. I just, you know, I just know one thing I'm seeing is this big bubble, and we're seeing a bubble in real estate, a bubble in the markets. We're seeing bubbles everywhere, and I think that's going to keep going for a bit before the Saturn, right? That Saturn side. So, and this is the new year, and we're probably going to see a lot of people. I would say that Jupiter on the ascendant is going to be that breakout moment, but people decide, I'm leaving Long Island after 60 years. I'm moving to, you know, I'm starting a business. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. So I think at Jupiter Ascendant is going to galvanize and inspire people to really, you know, do something to break out.
I hope so. Well, Happy New Year to everybody.
Happy New Year to you. Happy New Year to your wife. And I'm looking, we know what, I want to definitely talk about the karma cards in regards next time to what it's alluding to for this year in particular.
Okay, cool. And we'll see you on Ask the Oracles. I know you're coming up in April, right?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
I think you'll have fun. It's different than this, but I think you'll have fun. It's very.
You just have to, maybe you have to prep me for it a little bit, so I'm not caught off guard.
Okay, maybe you'll check it out tomorrow. Actually, I have my biggest fan of karma cards. This wonderful woman is going to be on tomorrow, and it's at 12:30 Eastern Daylight Time. So maybe check it out. And,
yeah, I'll tune in and check it out and get an idea of what I'm in for.
It's a lot of fun, and then you'll see Jeff Pulver, the tech oracle.
Right. We could talk about NTFs. And,
you and him should know each other.
NFTs, yeah.
You and him should know each other. He's a futurist like you.
Yeah, so I'm really excited. So I want to thank everyone for attending, and hopefully you got a lot out of this. It was certainly great talking with Monte, and I'm looking forward to next month's exchange. And I want to wish you all a happy astrological new year. Go out there, you know, make something big happen. Go big or go home.
Hold fast, everybody.